also worked at Mass and Cass doing meal programs in the middle of the night for trans population. And so this is extremely or figure out whether or not we have the answers, or how we have the answers, or who did it or who didn't do it. I think at this point we should all say it's our district, every single one of us. I think that it may be moved to my district. I hear interest in people moving it to my district, and
It won't be. Councilor Fernandez-Anderson has the floor.
I think that if it does, I will happily take it on. I will take it on now, even if it's not my district. I will work with you and do whatever I can, but I have to be honest that I too don't have the answers. But together, I think we can do a lot of work, at least to include the community advocates, to figure out where we can start this from scratch. I look forward and thank my council colleagues for filing this. I look forward to the conversation, and God willing, we find a solution.
Thank you, Councilor Fernandez-Anderson. Would anyone else like to speak on this matter? The chair recognizes Councilor.
Sorry, my name.
Would anyone like to add their name? Please raise your hand. Mr. Clerk, please add Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Bach, Councilor Braden, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Lara, Councilor Louis Jean, Councilor Mejia, Councilor Worrell. Please add the chair. Docket 1032 will be referred to the Committee on Environmental Justice, Resiliency, and Parks. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 1033, please.
Docket number 1033, Councilors Murphy and Baker offer the following. Order for a hearing to address the humanitarian crisis at the intersection of Massachusetts Avenue and Milnia-Cass Boulevard in Section 35 as a treatment option.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor Murphy. Councilor Murphy, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Flynn. So I'm filing this order with Councilor Baker because I know firsthand, since the sudden closure of Long Island Bridge in the fall of 2014, the opioid crisis and homelessness have driven people to that intersection of Massachusetts Avenue and Milnia-Cass Boulevard, which many of us refer to Mass and Cass, where those battling substance use disorder can seek methadone treatment or a bed at a city-run shelter. We've seen since 2014 the crowds there have been increasing, and the nicer weather catalyzed many of these people with substance use disorders to return to the area. The tents were removed, but anyone who drives by, which I do every day, hundreds of people are still there on that street, staying under large tarps or umbrellas to protect themselves from the weather day and night. Mayor Wu, the Boston Public Health Commission, and the Coordinated Response Team announced at the beginning of the summer the Warm Weather Program. This plan involved directing more healthcare workers and police officers to the intersection of Mass and Cass, helping guide people to support services and housing options, and arresting those engaging in drug dealing, prostitution, and violent crime. We know that many women and men are being sex trafficked in the area, being raped within the structures, if they're tents or tarps. And the violence and illegal activity still continues to plague this area. Earlier this month, Boston Police, working with the Suffolk District's Attorney Office, conducted an undercover operation that resulted in the arrest of 13 men charged with soliciting sex. This is a humanitarian crisis with an open-air drug market, a gathering spot for people who are suffering but shooting up in public. There's piles of trash, and I also work closely with Jen Tracy from the Office of Recovery Services and Tanya Del Ria, who is a good friend, who has taken over the recovery services down there. And I know Sue Sullivan from the BID team has wonderful workers who come out, and we are getting more money and support, so there are more workers helping clean up the area. But if you drive through at 6 a.m., there's piles of trash. There may be people sweeping and picking up, but by noon, there'll be more piles of trash there. We know that we have a rat problem in the city of Boston. There are rats there. We have monkeypox. We have COVID. We have pregnant women who are falling into the street. We have people who are in need of help. I drove by 2 weekends ago, going over the bridge near the Target, and I had to get out of the car to Narcan a woman who was almost dead on the ground. The EMS and the fire came. She didn't, once she came through, thank goodness, didn't want support, which I couldn't force on her, I know, but she walked back down the area. She was younger than my daughter. It's just heartbreaking for not just those suffering, the family members who I know go down, hopefully with a friend to find some of their loved ones, the business owners. I see a lot of times there's a noodle store where older Asian women work, and they're walking through that crowd early in the morning when it's dark. It's not safe. It's not good, and we need to do better. I believe there has to be a balance between law enforcement and recovery initiatives. Anyone who knows me know that I care deeply about those suffering from mental health and recovery needs. I'm not saying, and never would or believe, that we can arrest our way out of this. I'm not here to say that I have a better plan than anyone else, or I can do this better, or I want somebody to put me out on social media and say I'm better. I'm just here to be one of 13 whose responsibility it is to make this city better. I'll keep showing up like I do. I'll keep offering to my colleagues, help me, work with me, let's help this city. Mass and Cass is not just in that area. I had a loved one on Long Island in October of 2014. I can tell you what day of the week it was, what day of the month it was, when he was put in a cab and taken off of Long Island. He was in a detox. He didn't get to stay in recovery. Hundreds of people that night went back out onto the streets and they died. Their family members weren't as lucky as I was. Back then, I didn't even know I was going to say this, but I just remembered that back then, I made a phone call. I got my city councilor's phone number. I called him. He answered. That's Frank Baker. He connected me to John McGann. My loved one got into recovery. It worked. He wasn't on the right path. Will it work for everybody? No, it won't. Are there people down there and in Edward Everett Square, in Andrew Square, on Dot Ave, not ready for recovery? Absolutely. We don't give up on them, but we have to offer them all options. Not offering them options like this, many times they don't know better. As a mother, I know. As a teacher, I know. As a human who cares about others, I know. Sometimes you need someone to step into your life and guide you to a better place. And I'm here to say that I would love to have this hearing. I hope my colleagues show up, not just sign on. I hope we work together. And I hope we can offer Section 35s and talk about every other option there is out there. We need to put everything we have, we need to use every tool in our toolbox, and we need to set aside our feelings to know that if we save one, if we save 10, if we save however many, that we have to do better for the neighbors, for the business owners, for us, for a city. So thank you, Councilor Flynn.
Thank you, Council Murphy. The chair recognizes Councilor Baker. Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you again, Erin, for this. Just for the record, The bid that we were talking about, the 7 cleanups, 7 days a week, that started in the District 3 office. The Needles team, the Shops team that we all talk about all the time, that started in the District 3 office. The stands that were down there, that were encampments that were down there, the mess that it was years ago, those all got taken care of by the District 3 office. Me. I handled it. Roll your eyes. I handled it.
Excuse me, no comments from my
And we
from the
also
gallery
had-
and from my colleagues, please.
And we also had a fully baked public-private partnership with a fully designed New Clifford Park, but the fit between the private partnership wasn't right for the neighborhood, so we walked away from that. That's what the District 3 Council did there, and my people voted me in. With that being said, we talked earlier about all options being on the table. Well, Section 35 is on the table. There's a saying in AA, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So we take people from the tents and we put them in the roundhouse at an expense to you, the taxpayers, 15, 20 million bucks is what we're spending at just the roundhouse, 15, 20 million bucks. That 20 million, that 30 million, whatever it is, if we can get an answer, should be spent on real beds, run by DPH over at Nashua Street, because when someone gets healthy, if their first step is out on Mass and Cass, guess what? They don't have a prayer. They don't have a chance. So Nashua Street will
Excuse
become
me,
a
no comments
decentralized...
from the gallery,
I'm not
please.
worried about them, Mr. President.
Excuse
Okay,
me,
yep.
excuse me. Council Baker, please continue. I'm just asking the gallery, please don't interrupt my colleagues. The chair recognizes Councilor
So I'm
Baker.
just saying, if all options are on the table, all options need to be on the table. Intervention, treatment, diversion. The only people in my life, and I've had heroin in my life for years. I buried a brother 30 years ago. 30 years ago, March 3rd, my brother Ricky died, heroin overdose. It's been in my family. I know what the addict does. And if we don't start doing things different, all of our parks are going to be taken over. All of our streets are going to be taken over. And we're going to meet them at where they're at. They're in the parks. They're in the playgrounds. They're using our parks and playgrounds for their toilets. So until something changes, nothing's going to change. Aaron, thank you for your bravery on this one. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. The chair recognizes Councilor Lara. Councilor Lara, you have the floor.
I would like to sign my name. I don't have any comments. I just want the makers to clarify for the record what Section 35 is.
The chair, thank you, Councilor Lara. The chair recognizes Councilor Murphy. Councilor Murphy, there's a question on the floor. Can you explain Section 35 for us, please?
I could. And why, could I ask Councilor Lara why she's asking for that clarification? It will be spoken at the hearing.
Excuse me. Only one person can speak at a time. Councilor Murphy, can you explain the
Sure.
the Section 35
Yes.
process?
It's when you can bring a loved one or those struggling to a court and they intervene, and there's a time that they can spend in detox. Many times in the state of Massachusetts and the city of Boston, they do not spend the full amount of time.
Excuse me. The people in the gallery, please don't interrupt us, please.
We're hoping,
The chair recognizes Councilor Murphy. Councilor Murphy.
I think I finished. It's
Thank
when you
you,
can go to
Councilor
the
Murphy.
court and they, yep, I'm done.
The chair recognizes Councilor Louis-Jean. Councilor Louis-Jean, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Section 35, and I acknowledge the experience of my colleagues, but Section 35 is an extreme reaction that is allowed under Massachusetts law to involuntarily commit someone who hasn't been convicted of a crime, right? So it's taking away their civil liberties and putting them under state confinement when they have not been committed of a crime. And as a result, we have to be very careful. And we need to make sure that it's demonstrated by facts and by extreme support in order for us to say that this is even an option on the table, not even talking about expanding Section 35, which is the undertone that I heard. And so I'm deeply concerned about any expansion of the use of Section 35. Yes, it's permissible under the law, but just because something is legal does not make it just. We have a system that is completely unfair.
Excuse me, please don't interrupt my colleagues. The
And
chair
s-
recognizes Councilor Louis Jean.
I'm fine, Mr. President. And so
Thank-
I just want to make sure that we are not talking about expansion and that we are recognizing the harm that involuntary commitment does to our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Louis Jean. The chair recognizes Councilor Arroyo. Councilor Arroyo, you have the floor.
I just want to note my opposition to Section 35s in any form. Section 35s, when I was a public defender, led to several overdoses of people who I represented. There's data on this that Section 35s increased the risk of overdose by almost 2 to 3 times. In many cases, Section 35s can operate as death sentences or a death row sentence. And so what we are really talking about is forced involuntary detox. Sometimes when I was representing folks, what would end up happening is they were promised sort of a health facility, but they were actually sent to a carceral facility. And that is not something that helps people who are in this kind of trauma, in this kind of addiction, struggling with substance use disorder. And so I would hope that we can instead redirect our focus to some of the things that actually Councilor Baker brought up, which is increasing the supply of beds for people who need rehabilitation treatment, increasing the supply of mental health facility space, which people need. But I would actually state that I believe we should not be using Section 35s, period, in any way, shape, or form on individuals who are living in the city of Boston moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Arroyo. The last speaker on this matter will be Councilor Mejia. Councilor Mejia, you have the floor.
President, and I also just want to state 2 things. One is I also had a loved one who overdosed, and I also have a niece right now who's out in these streets dealing with her own issues. And who am I, right, to say that I have any right to force her into any type of environment that she's not ready to go into? We always talk about the criminal justice system. Well, there is no justice in the way we're moving in this space if we are imposing our own beliefs on others, right? So while I appreciate my colleagues bringing this hearing order into the space, I do not think that it is going to be something that I will be supporting. So I just want to go on the record on that.
Thank
right
you,
now.
Councilor Mejia. Would anyone like to add their name as a sponsor? Please raise your hand. Mr. Clerk, please add Councilor Fernandez Anderson, Councilor Flaherty.
Does my hand count?
Nope. Please don't interrupt my colleagues. Please add Councilor Fernandez Anderson, Councilor Flaherty, and please add the chair. Docket 1033 will be referred to the Committee on Public Health, Homelessness, and Recovery. Let me just stop for a second before we continue. I'm going to ask the public not to speak during this City Council hearing. I'm going to ask you not to disrupt this body while we're speaking. I'm also going to ask my colleagues, please don't interrupt each other when someone else is speaking. Docket 1033 will be referred to the Committee on Public Health, Homelessness, and Recovery. We're on to docket 1034.
Docket number 1034, Councilors Mejia and Coletta offer the following. Order for a hearing on government accountability and transparency around the Clarity Pool closure in Charlestown.
The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia. Councilor Mejia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I just want to add Councilor Louis Jean as our 3rd co-sponsor.
Hearing no objection, Councilor Louis Jean is added as an original co-sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I just want to thank Councilor Coletta, who is unable to be here with us today, for co-sponsoring this docket alongside our office. We know that here in the city of Boston, the way we do business, things are always done to us, without us, right? And oftentimes when we're trying to seek information, it's like playing the Da Vinci Code, trying to crack it and figure out where things went wrong. And so that is why I created a new committee here in the city of Boston, and this committee is called Government Accountability, Transparency, and Accessibility, because when it comes to information, it's drip, drip. We have to wait for it like molasses. When it comes to transparency, you have to clean the mirror 5 times with Windex just to see clearly. And when it comes to accessibility, you have to wait in line for years before you can get yours. So we're going to change the way we do business. And this is an opportunity with this particular situation that we find ourselves in to do just that. Earlier this year, community members were made aware that the pool in Charlestown would not be accessible to the public just for a few days before it was set to open. And although need for repairs was known, repairs were not made during the off-season, and now it is closed due to safety concerns. And as you all know, this year we experienced record-breaking heat in Boston. With limited recreational opportunities for families in Charlestown, the closure of this pool was and still is unacceptable. The lack of transparency needs to stop. And if this continues, the way that I see this, and this is what I heard when I went to one of the community meetings, is that this is impacting people who live in BHA, the housing development, right? We want to talk about access to those who have and those who have not. And these are the things that often get done to us. And so I can understand and appreciate that. And I made a commitment in that meeting that we were going to lean into this conversation, because I always talk about all means all. And yes, all does mean all in all spaces and places, even when it is uncomfortable. So with that said, we're hoping that this hearing is going to create an opportunity for us to hold ourselves accountable to the people and create space for folks to uplift their own voices. And so I just want to thank the Charlestown community for their unrelentless advocacy, because that's what it has been. And thank you for their partnership in working alongside us to get us to to this point. I look forward to working alongside my colleague, Councilor Louis-Jean and Coletta, to host this hearing, and more importantly, for the people to finally have the answers that they've been dying for, literally. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. The chair recognizes Councilor Louis-Jean. Councilor Louis-Jean, you have the floor.
Mr. President, and I thank Councilor Mejia for adding me to this. I also thank Councilor Coletta for her leadership here. Even during the ARPA hearings, Councilor Coletta was trying to fight for ARPA money for the Charlestown community to help support and prevent the closure of this pool. We were not successful at that attempt because we were told that it needed to be through the capital budget. But the residents of Charlestown have been for years asking for updates to this pool. And so, you know, it's time for all of the talking to stop. They deserve answers to their questions. And we all know that a pool is more than just a pool. It's a gathering space for community. It's where folks can come together to learn how to swim. I've mentioned this before. My family, I don't know how to swim because growing up we had a traumatic experience. My sister had a traumatic experience at a pool. But knowing how to swim is an important life skill, and it's a gathering spot for our neighborhoods where we can stay active and be healthy. And so we are all better off when our BCYF pools are open and inclusive in all neighborhoods, so that no neighborhood feels left out, whether Mattapan or Charlestown, everyone should feel like they belong. So I also look forward to this hearing because it will showcase the vital importance of social spaces, and will also highlight how important it is for us to invest in our public goods. A public pool is a public good. We need to support our public goods with public dollars that we decide collectively are the things that matter. And so I look forward to this hearing on this pool. It is so unfortunate that it has taken incredible advocacy on behalf of this community for us to have this conversation, but I'm glad that it's finally happening, and I'm glad that I'm working with my fellow at-large city councilor and the district councilor to address these issues, again, working in partnership to solve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Louis-Jean. The chair recognizes Councilor Fernandez-Anderson. Councilor Fernandez-Anderson, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Flynn. I'd like to add my name and thank the makers of this hearing order. there's so many things that I can say about this across the board, across the city, especially in Black and brown communities. I've gotten so many calls from pools outside of my district as well as inside my district that get closed. I think overall the system is completely broken. The website will say one thing. I will send that off to constituents, and then they're literally outside of facilities to learn that places are closed, especially when there are heat emergencies. Families will travel on a bus or walk to the facilities to find it closed. So overall, I think, of course, I support the reopening of this pool and also look forward to talking about how to make it all feasible. But making this racially equitable as well. We know that especially Black and brown boys, children die most of not learning how to swim or lack of these resources. So I look forward to the conversation, and I thank you for filing it.
Thank you, Councilor Fernandez-Anderson. Would anyone else like to speak on this matter? The chair recognizes Councilor Lara. Councilor Lara, you have the floor.
Thank you. I would just like to add my name, and I want to thank the makers for putting this forth. A couple of months ago, Councilor Flynn and I put together a hearing order to talk about increasing access not only to pools, but increasing access to water, swimming, and safety for young people, specifically young people of color and children with disabilities. This is an issue that's really important to me because I'm a parent of a disabled child, a parent with a child who's autistic, and not only are Black and brown children more prone to drowning, Black and brown children who have special needs are also at much, much higher risk. And we cannot make safety swimming lessons available if we don't have the infrastructure to make those places available. There are so many pools across the city that are closed, so many that are in need of repair and in disarray. And I think that the people of the city of Boston deserve the best possible infrastructure so that we can provide the best possible programming for them. And so I'm really excited to sign my name to this. I'm excited to continue the conversation. And I look forward to President Flynn and I hosting our hearing on increasing access to safety.
Thank you, Councilor Lara. And I just wanted to echo what all of my colleagues stated about swimming, water safety, the critical role swimming lessons play in our society. We're surrounded by the ocean. In the high population, the high percentage of drownings in the city are children of color and students with disabilities as well. So we need to do more to make sure that we fix every single pool in the city, but as importantly, we need to make sure we provide every kid in Boston access to swimming lessons. The Boston Public School System is working with the YMCA on a program, but we need to expand it. In my opinion, every kid in the city of Boston should be guaranteed swimming lessons because it's a critical issue, it's a life and death issue. I want to say thank you to my colleagues for their important work on this issue. Would anyone else like to speak? Would anyone like to add their name? Please raise your hand. Mr. Clerk, please add Councilor Bach, Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Fernandez-Anderson, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Lara, Councilor Louis-Jean, Councilor Murphy, Councilor Worrell, please add the chair. I'm sorry. Please add Councilor Braden. Originally, I was going to refer this to the Strong Women, Families, and Communities, but after listening to my colleague, Councilor Mejia, I'm going to assign it to Government Accountability, Transparency, and Accessibility. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 1035, please.
Docket number 1035, Councilor Baker offered the following. Order requesting certain information under Section 17F relative to documents related to any investigation of Ricardo Arroyo while preserving the victim's privacy.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And before I call on Councilor Baker, this will be my 4th time that I'll be repeating, asking my colleagues to treat each other with respect and asking people in the galley to be respectful and not to interrupt anybody. I'm going to ask it for a 5th time. Please don't do that. The chair recognizes Councilor Baker. Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, quick point of interest, I believe that only the maker is allowed to speak on a 17F. I'm not sure if you have that rule there or, and I believe it's your discretion.
Let me take a quick recess. We're back in session. The chair recognizes Councilor Baker. Only Councilor Baker will speak on this. Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. As elected officials, the public has put their trust in our words and our actions. Any violation of that trust, certainly allegations of sexual assault must be investigated. We owe that to the survivors at the very least. As the dean of this delegation, I take our commitment and my commitment as a city councilor very seriously. The allegations before us of a person that is sitting on this council right now are serious at the least, very serious at the least. We must take action to review and address these grave allegations against a sitting Boston City Councilor. The point of a 17F is not meant to penalize or demean anyone. It is one of the most powerful tools the council has in its purview. No other legislative body has this option. The truth's in the details. This filing will allow us to obtain the necessary information required in order for us, this body, to make an informed decision. The decision to file a 17F to release the records did not come lightly or without repercussions for my family and me. I was not confident that there would be a swift action plan. The gravity of these elections calls for swift and deliberate action. So, well, knowing this would bring harassment and scrutiny into our lives, the lives of my family, I stand before you assured in my decision to place the survivors first, prioritize the integrity of this body, and quite honestly, follow my moral compass. No matter the outcome, my conscience is good with this decision. I do want to point out, though, there was never a need for the District 6 Council to file a 17F on me. That was done purely as an act of retaliation and in an effort to deflect and divert attention from the sexual assault allegations made against a city councilor on this body. I've been truthful and transparent from the beginning. Prior to my being elected to my first term 12 years ago, the public knew of my past experiences. I've always been upfront about the paths I took, the lessons I've learned, and the changes I've made. In short, there's nothing new to be learned here, and this is on the 17F that's filed after me. Almost 30 years later, in fact, the filing only demonstrates the length of desperate groups who go to seek vengeance on a person asking for documents of truth.
Could my colleagues please not interrupt each other? Councilor Baker, please continue.
Let me be clear. I have made amends along before this day and hold myself accountable.
We'll take a quick recess. We'll take a quick recess.
And if that is true, Councilor Baker is using his time to comment on my 17F, which is not allowed.
Councilor Baker, you please talk about yours, and please don't talk about Councilor Lara's.
The state of affairs has become a massive distraction from the important work that our actual council duties. This body who preaches accountability and transparency has a dark shadow cast over it. I employ my council colleagues to acknowledge our moral responsibility for the sake of the sexual assault survivors and the truth to take action. As a result of a brave survivor coming forward, I will withdraw this 17F, Mr. President. However, as things continue to unfold, I'm prepared to file this request again.
Thank you, Councilor Baker.
I want to just end with this. If a predator continues to roam, the killing field only becomes larger. Thank you, Mr. President.
The chair. Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. I asked for no interruptions from people in the galley. I'd like to ask again, please, no interruptions from the galley, and I'd like to ask no comments at all from my council colleagues when another council colleague is speaking. It's rude.
That was rude, and that was disrespectful to us.
Docket, excuse me. Docket 1035 is withdrawn. Docket 0136, please.
Document 1036, Councilor Lara, order requesting certain information under Section 17F relative to 1905 Center Street and 1911 Center Street.
The chair recognizes Councilor Lara. Councilor Lara, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Flynn. The Keith House in West Roxbury that is formerly located at 1911 Center Street is the former home of William S. Keith. William Keith was born in 1812 and was appointed the postmaster in 1836. The house was built around the time of his appointment. William Keith's tenure as postmaster included the Civil War years, during which the local post office would have processed mail from Union soldiers stationed at nearby Camp Andrew. His tenure at postmaster and his time in this house also included the second half of the 19th century, which saw Boston changing from a merchant city of 200,000 inhabitants to an industrial metropolis of over 1 million. The house stood on Center Street during Boston's horse-drawn streetcar time and stayed on Center Street, and is an enduring piece of the era of Boston's streetcar suburbs. When what were once 3 towns of Roxbury, Dorchester, and West Roxbury began to grow into the vibrant neighborhoods of Boston that they are today. On Thursday, August 11th in 2022, developers demolished the historic Keith House at 1911 Center Street. Despite assurances in June of this year from ISD towards our office, ISD informed us that no demolition permit would be issued until the Boston Landmarks Commission process, which was going to determine if the building would be denoted as a landmark, was finished. At the BLC meeting 2 days prior, on Tuesday, August 9th, the developer's attorney requested an extension of the BLC's public comment period until August 26th of 2022. Despite the community's rapid response to the city before 8 a.m. on 8/11/22, calls to 311, 911, and ISD, the demolition occurred. However, a stop work order was issued the next day for 1905 Center Street, but we have received no response from the numerous city agencies we have contacted to learn why. Therefore, we request information from the developer and the city on whether a demolition permit was given, what date, and why the Boston Landmarks Commission was not allowed to go through the full process on determining if the site at 1911 Center Street qualified. We'd also like to know if 1905 Center Street is going through the landmark process as it still stands. My office has been working on this issue with the residents of West Roxbury since before I came into office. We have done an incredible amount of work for the last 8 months, and so have the people of that neighborhood, to save the Keith House. We have greased every wheel. We have gone through every single process, and we were just at the end of the finish line to make sure that the Keith House was going to be considered a landmark and we were going to be able to save it. This developer at every turn has undermined the process, has disrespected the people of the neighborhood and my office, and now ISD is being completely unresponsive about how and why they were giving a permit to demolish that landmark in West Roxbury. I cannot state in any clearer form how incredibly furious I am. The people of the neighborhood have been working on this for years, and we need answers about why ISD gave this demolition permit to this developer. So we're filing a 17F. We want every single piece of information and communication between the developer and ISD because we want to know what happened. Now, we know that there's a lot of issues with communications inside of ISD. We know that there are people making decisions that are not checking in with other people. And if it's a systemic issue that we have to deal with, then I want to know what's going on. And our office wants the answers in a timely fashion. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Lara. Council Lara seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 1036. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1036 has passed. We're on to docket 1037.
Docket number 1037, Councilor Lara offer the following. Order requesting certain information under Section 17F relative to Councilor Frank Baker.
The chair recognizes Councilor Lara. Councilor Lara, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Flynn. As an abolitionist, it is really hard for me to fathom that we need to look at someone's criminal record or lack of criminal record from many years ago to assess whether or not they're fit to serve in public office or if they're fit to chair committees. In all areas of society, we often use records against people to stigmatize them decades later, even when they're found of no fault.
Excuse me. Whoever has done that, could I ask that? We're in a brief recess. It's disrespectful to interrupt a colleague. Can we please allow Councilor Lara to speak, please? We're back in session. Councilor Lara, you have the floor. Excuse me? Excuse me. Can Councilor Lara please continue?
I mean, the racist, please tell
Excuse me.
Stop antagonizing us.
Okay. After the next outburst from anyone else, I'm going to ask this whole body to be cleared from all spectators. If I hear one more interruption from either side, everyone's going to leave. The chair recognizes Councilor Lara. Councilor Lara, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Flynn. As an abolitionist, it's really hard for me to fathom that we need to look at someone's criminal record from many years ago, or lack of criminal record, to make decisions on whether or not they're fit to serve in public office or chair their committees. In all areas of society, we often use records against people to stigmatize them decades later, or their lack of records to stigmatize them decades later. Here on this very body, we have counselors who were at some point undocumented, whose mere presence in the United States is deemed an illegal act punishable with arrest. In his own words, Councilor Baker shared that he was a 25-year-old, much different than who he was when he was arrested, and that the public should look at who he is now and not who he was then. I don't disagree. I didn't file this 17F to retaliate or because I believe Councilor Baker is somehow unfit to serve. That is a decision that should be made by the voters and the City Council in a democratic way. I filed it to illustrate something that has become very obvious to me in the last few days. That people of color in this city and on this council are not only held to higher standards, they are also disciplined in harsher ways by leadership. What we know for sure is that none of our colleagues has broken any laws or any council rules during their tenure on the city council. I think that my point has become salient to every single member of the community in the city, which is why, Mr. Clerk, I would like to withdraw my 17F from the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lara. Docket 1037 has been withdrawn. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 1038.
As Italian American Heritage Day in the city of Boston.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The chair recognizes Councilor Murphy. Councilor Murphy, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Flynn. I was going to work on this with Councilor Coletta, but when she's not here now and we've had more conversations, so I would like to withdraw it for this meeting and we'll bring it up at a later meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Docket 1038 has been withdrawn. We're on to personnel orders. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 1039.
Docket number 1039, Councilor Flynn for Councilor
The
Fernandez.
chair seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 1039. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The docket is passed. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 1040.
Docket number 1040, Councilor Flynn for Councilor
The chair
Fernandez
seeks suspension
Anderson.
of the rules and passage of docket 1040. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The docket is passed. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 1041.
Docket number 1041, Councilor Flynn for Councilor Worrell.
The chair seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 1041. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The docket is passed. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 1042.
Docket number 1042, Councilor Flynn for Councilor Lara.
The chair seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 1042. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The docket is passed. Mr. Clerk, please read docket 1043.
Docket number 1043, Councilor Flynn offered the following: order for appointment of temporary employee Ethan Vara in City Council.
The chair seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 1043. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The docket is passed. We're moving on to late files. I am informed by the clerk that there are two late file matters. One late file matter is a letter of absence from today from Councilor Coletta. The second one is an order from City Council Braden on related redistricting process principles. The late file should now be on everyone's desk. We will now take a vote to add these items into the agenda. All those in favor of adding the late file matters into the agenda say aye. Aye. Thank you. The late file matter has been added into the agenda. Mr. Clerk, can you please read the first late file matter into the agenda, which is a letter from City Councilor Coletta.
Letter from Councilor Coletta. Dear Council President Flynn, I regret to inform you that I will be absent from our weekly council meeting on August 31st, 2022, due to health-related reasons. Kindly read this letter into the record. Sincerely, Councilor Coletta.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. That letter has been added. Mr. Clerk, can you read the second late file matter into the agenda, which is an order from Councilor Braden?
Order from Councilor Liz Braden, order for adoption of City Council redistricting principles. Whereas in the 1981 municipal election, residents of the City of Boston voted 41,973 to 34,623 in favor of a binding referendum changing the structure of the Boston City Council from being elected entirely at large and adding district representation. Whereas historical context led the Massachusetts Legislature Special Joint Committee on Redistricting and the Boston City Council's Committee on Census and Redistricting to facilitate the 2011 and 2012 redistricting processes by intentionally prioritizing meaningful engagement of residents from marginalized communities and neighborhoods historically split across district lines. With ample time to scrutinize proposals at dozens of public hearings and committee meetings spanning more than a year, and despite these efforts, the mayor twice disapproved the council maps due to the inequitable racial imbalance. Now, therefore, be it ordered that the City Council adopt the following principles to guide the informed procedures led by the Committee on Redistricting. for crafting legally defensible city council electoral districts for the city of Boston pursuant to Chapter 605 of the Acts of 1982, as amended by Chapter 343 of the Acts of 1986.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The chair recognizes Councilor Braden. Councilor Braden, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President and Mr. Clerk. When committee assignments to our body were announced in January 22, I looked forward to getting to work as Vice Chair of the Committee on Redistricting. Redistricting is an immensely important responsibility and a process that has the opportunity to enhance and expand civic participation while strengthening public confidence in our elections and democratic governance. Transparency in redistricting is essential, especially given the City of Boston and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts' history of litigation brought by Boston residents of colour against district maps drawn by federal, state and municipal elected offices. From the very inception of the Boston City Council's shift from being elected entirely at large to the inaugural council districts of 1983, the city's very first map was ruled unconstitutional in the case Latino Political Action Committee versus City of Boston, prompting the city and the state to adopt emergency election procedures for Boston. The second, third and fourth rounds of City Council redistricting in 1987, 1993 and 2002 were also impacted or delayed amid further litigation based on proposed state or congressional districts. Coalitions of colour, led by Boston's black community, mobilised for equal representation through multiple suits brought by the Black Political Task Force. This historic context led both the State House's Special Joint Committee on Redistricting and the City of Boston's Committee on Census and Redistricting to facilitate a 2011 to 2012 redistricting process that intentionally prioritised meaningful community engagement to direct outreach to communities of colour. In 2011-2012, the City Council redistricting process lasted more than 1 year, with dozens of community meetings and public hearings, including those held in neighbourhoods across the city. Despite best intentions, even this thorough process produced maps approved by the Council that were twice disapproved by the Mayor due to inequitable racial imbalances. This shows just how much is at stake. As Vice